All right, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. And I'm happy to welcome back friend of the show, the Bulwark's, Will Saletan. Will, how you doing?
Good, Matt. How are you?
I'm awesome, man. And we've got a lot to cover, but let's start with these elections. We had these two special elections down in Florida. Looks like Republicans won those, but maybe not by the margins they should. But the big story is this race in Wisconsin where Elon Musk poured in millions of dollars to help the Republican, but not enough. And the Democrat won. What do you make of the night from an election standpoint?
So I got to confess that I got my hopes up look. I'm devoutly anti-Trump, so I was hoping that Trump and Musk would get punished in a lot of these elections. They did in Wisconsin, and I'm happy about that. In Florida, I did have my hopes up because of Matt, I don't even know if we believe this was on the level. Supposedly, there was a Tony Fabrizio poll, one of Trump's pollsters, that suggested that the Republicans were going to lose the Mike Waltz seat in Florida, which was at Trump plus 30, more than 30 district. Waltz had won it by more than 30, and it looked like maybe the Democrats would actually win that, which is insane, right? It's winning a minus 30 district, but it narrowed to about 15. So anyway, the Democrats did obviously better than their previous margins in both of those Florida districts by a substantial amount, and they won the race in Wisconsin, and that was at least a rebuke to Musk. So for people like me,
I think Republicans are legitimately spooked about Florida. I mean, it was
Mhm.
enough that they pulled the nomination of Elise Stefanik to be UN ambassador because they were worried about her seat in Pennsylvania.
New York.
Sorry, New York. Good catch. See, you're already correcting me. Thank you. Fact check. New York. My take is, the way I look at this is, I look at these House special elections as being sort of like the way the U.S. Senate's going to look in the midterms, which is, I think Republicans will be, they won't do as well, but the game is sort of rigged in their favor. Whereas the Supreme Court race in Wisconsin, I see as more of an analogy for the House races in the midterms, where Democrats will very likely take back the House and have a big night. But I don't know if that's a fair analogy or not.
Yeah, I think it is. And all of this, this all happened right before the April 2nd tariffs go into effect, right? I mean, we had some of the Trump tariffs
Liberation Day, baby. Liberation Day.
So we've only seen just the beginning of the damage that's going to be done by Trump's economic policies. And so there's a very good chance that the economic harm from Trump's policies will, exacerbate these Democratic gains in multiple races. And as you note, there's just no margin for error for Republicans in the House. They've got enough districts that are closer than 15 points that if there's a shift like this across the board in the midterms, for sure, the Democrats will get the House.
Yeah, right now my prediction's 15. Democrats pick up 15 seats, which still would give them a narrow majority, but a much wider, larger majority than Republicans have had in recent years. But yeah, I think you're totally right, Will. Right now, the momentum is swinging in the Democrats' direction, and I think it will likely continue and expand after these tariffs, which, if they actually go into effect, but it seems like all the smart people I talk to tell me that Trump is just a firm believer in this, and and he really sees it as and maybe we'll go through some pain, no pain, no gain, as they say. But so it seems like he's a true believer in these. And I think for a long time we thought he's going to go to the edge and then pull back. He'll be spooked by the stock market, but maybe not. Maybe he's in this for the long haul, and that's probably good news for Democrats, bad news for, our investments.
Yeah, I'm kind of baffled by the disbelief. Aren't people on Wall Street supposed to be smart, Matt? The investors, including Republican investors, Trump sympathetic investors, you're supposed to have actually made money in the market. You're supposed to be good at assessing the situation, anticipating, making moves accordingly. Trump could not have been clearer throughout the campaign that he wanted to bring back the McKinley era, that he believed in tariffs, that he, and he spelled this out in great detail. Like, he literally thinks that he can fund the United States government through tariffs, which magically somehow come from other countries that will pay them and not pass the cost along to American consumers. I don't have to tell you how nuts all this is. But he had this whole economic theory in his head, and somehow these smart Wall Street people ended up being surprised that Trump actually follows through on this. And then, of course, there was some jerking around, like tariff, no tariff, and they thought like that was a tip off that he wasn't going to do it. But no, he's a real believer. And
look, I mean, that's why when he talks about a third term, starts joking about it, like, if people tell you who they are, believe them. And maybe he will, maybe he won't. But like, if there's a 1% chance, that's a deal breaker. But it's not just the Wall Street experts who didn't take him literally, but maybe they took him seriously, right? So many people are stunned. The guy who worked at the VA, who was a veteran who got fired, who said, "Hey, I didn't think Trump was coming for me." The woman in West Virginia, who had a MAGA, Trump flag hanging outside her house, who lost her job, didn't think it would go this far. So like, there's so many people who just honestly didn't pay attention at all to what he promised to do on the campaign trail, or just thought it was like overblown rhetoric not to be taken seriously.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Let me be fair to these people, because we're both piling on them. It is true that in his first term, Trump didn't do a lot of this stuff, or he was held back. And so maybe a lot of voters thought it'll be like the first term. I mean, that's kind of, if I'm an ordinary person going about my life, that's my level of thought. Trump, economy good, let's put him in again. They just didn't figure in the part where the people who restrained Trump in his first term aren't there in the second term. The filter has like gotten rid of them. And so he's completely surrounded by yes men. So I guess, to be fair, that was a surprise. And I will also admit,
it might have been a surprise to them, but we were saying that. I mean, David Frum had the famous line, "The velociraptors have learned how to work the doorknob." I mean, again, I'm not saying that everyone listens to my podcast or the Bulwark, but we were sounding it's not like people weren't sounding the alarm. And I'll be honest, I think we're worse off than if Trump had just gotten reelected in 2020. I mean, they took those 4 years where he wasn't just an ex-president, he was a president in exile. They used those 4 years to bone up, write these executive orders, figure out how to, usurp the so-called deep state. So this is really, he's now like a president on year 11 or something, you know what I mean? Or like year 9 or something like that, effectively. So anyway, it's what you get. What you get is what you got.
Yeah, and I strongly agree with your argument there, and I would add to it. Something happened to Trump when, in the intervening period, he thinks he's bulletproof. He has this serenity about him now that he's been vindicated in his increasing insanity. So part of it is he did January 6th. He was prosecuted for, multiple crimes. I think he was guilty in at least some of this. I think he was guilty in the classified documents case. Anyway, he bulls his way through it. The Republican Party comes right back to him. He says he's going to win the election in a landslide. People are like, no, he does so many things during the 2024 campaign to alienate people. He still wins in a landslide. So he thinks he has this, he literally thinks he's like the voice of God, right? He thinks that in Butler, Pennsylvania,
he was literally shot.
Yeah.
Churchill said, I think it was Churchill who said, "There's nothing more exhilarating than having been shot at with no effect." Right. So he's been literally and figuratively shot at, and all he does is get ahead. And yeah, I mean, if everyone kissed my butt all day, every day, and if everyone and if everyone told me that's not going to work, and it's somehow bumbling and it worked, like eventually I would start to think that I had all the answers too.
Yeah. And you raised a really good point, the stock market, right? That's a really good example of something that used to spook Trump, right? if the market went down, he would freak out and he would adjust. He would be like, I don't, that's a bad sign. That's a negative health feedback for the country and for me personally. And now it doesn't seem to work anymore. Now we have, I mean, Goldman Sachs just like increased their inflation forecast and lowered their economic forecast. And one of their points was not just the consumer sentiment, not just the growth, but they said, we're seeing signals from the White House that they are more willing to endure pain or make the people, suffer economic weakening of the economy because they believe. And that's so the pathology, psychological pathology inside the White House is now part of economic forecasts.
I mean, we've seen in history people who are very, very lucky until they're not. At some point, it runs out. We'll see if that happens. But man, Donald Trump literally couldn't, if he was trying to turn the public against him, I'm not sure what he would do or say differently. So we'll see how it goes. Let's talk about the, let's stick with the Wisconsin race real quick, because I think Elon Musk, right? You were talking about this. Musk goes in there, does a rally. He gives away millions of dollars. I think if you sign a petition against activist judges, who's not against that? If you sign a petition, you got $100 from him, and then he gave away $1 million to two people. I'm not sure if this was a fair raffle, but one of the people who won $1 million, I think, was head of like the college Republicans or the young Republicans or something in Wisconsin, whatever. And he loses. And I think it's very clear to me that although Donald Trump does, certainly within the Republican Party, have this likability and this magic, Elon Musk is like straight out of central casting a villain. And I don't know what this means going forward, but it seems very clear that Musk went all in and it did not work.
Okay, so now we're in your wheelhouse here, man, with the campaign money. I think what happened here is very important and healthy, which is, so on the one hand, Musk comes in, he spends, I thought it was 20 million. Apparently it's $25 million in a state Supreme Court race.
Pretty soon you're talking about real money, say, right?
It's insane. He and Musk spent I forget how much money on Trump, and that worked out. And he did get out the vote in Pennsylvania, and that worked out. So he also thinks he's kind of bulletproof. But he spends this enormous amount of money. And if he were to have won this race, we would be seeing sort of the exacerbation of oligarchy, where the oligarch can not only get rich, but control the political system, that his money drives election outcomes. It's extremely important that there be a backlash just from the immune system of the country, that when the oligarch comes in and tries this, that that per se becomes a reason for the other people to show up and vote against him, just for a balance of power. And I think that happened.
Look, I mean, incentives are really important. And we've seen that the legal guardrails are not enough. We need political pushback to stop bad things from happening. And up until now, we haven't had it. This is like one of the few signs where bad behavior is actually being punished, and that will have a positive effect in terms of incentives.
Yeah, I think it's really important. There's been an enduring question of whether Elon's money is so strong that it will eclipse Elon's character as a voting issue. Elon is just weird. Let's be honest. Like I don't understand why people like Donald Trump, but they do. There's something spontaneous about him. He's just like talks like a real person. He's temperamental. I don't know. But Elon Musk, he's just weird, and he's got, because he stood next to the Resolute desk and talked about, and he controls Doge and all that stuff, people associate all the cuts with Musk, and he doesn't have Trump's magic in some way. And so somehow that was a sufficient boogeyman to help with. Now the question now, Matt, is if Musk is out of the picture, if the House Republicans succeed in like telling Trump, look, jettison this guy, he's the one who's got the baggage of all the cuts and you'll be clean. I don't know, do you think that'll work?
Here's what I do if I'm Trump. I accept the fact that Democrats taking the House 2026 is a fait accompli. Therefore, I let Elon Musk take the fall. I stick with him through the midterms, blame it on Musk, and then dispatch him. That's what I do if I'm Trump. Purely Machiavellian. It's going to happen anyway. Let's let Musk take the blame.
So that's a good strategy. Your problem is that it's a long-term strategy for Donald Trump. It requires him to be patient. I don't think he's got it in him, but I think you're wise.
Well, I wrote a piece at the LA Times where I talk about this lack of, Elon Musk said that, I'm paraphrasing, but something to the effect of that the biggest problem facing Western civilization is empathy. It's not racism, it's not inequality, it's not the fact that side panels are coming unglued from Tesla cars as people are driving. It's the biggest problem in America, Western civilization, is that we just care too much about each other. And so obviously we're seeing this in the case of Doge, with firing people and making senior citizens, get on the internet as opposed to calling an 800 number to fix their social security problems or whatever. But it's definitely manifesting itself in the case of immigration. So first of all, did you see this just horrific press conference that Kristi Noem held, where she's standing in front of this? It looks, I don't know, like out of the Holocaust or something. These guys are shirtless. They've shaved their heads. A lot of them probably really are gang members, but certainly not all of them. Some of them seem to be pretty innocent as far as I could tell. What did you make of that?
So I did not see the whole press conference. I saw a still from it. So I've seen the image of her doing that. This is a really complicated issue. Okay. First of all, confession up front. I think that illegal immigration is an issue where Republicans have a legitimate case that the Biden administration didn't do its job, just didn't do its job, and Democrats were wrong on that issue not to take it more seriously. Having said that, the way that Trump is going about this is the opposite, right? It's sort of, we're not going to fuss about civil liberties. We just want to send a clear message to Latin America, to all over the world. You come here, bad things are going to happen to you. And that's working. But as you know, from looking around the world, some of the most effective deterrence you can do is by abusing rights, right? It's by hurting people. Occasionally you send an innocent American to a Salvadoran prison, if you have a bunch of people humiliated and mistreated by some autocratic regime in Central America, hey, you just have to break a few eggs. And that seems to be the Trump policy. This is what you get.
But I mean, look, I think that the guy who had this figured out is Edmund Burke. And he said it's ordered liberty. You got to have order, law and order, but you also have to have liberty. You got to have both. So if you want to solve the crime, I could solve the crime problem in 5 minutes. If we basically crack down on crime to the point where if you look suspicious, we're going to unleash hell on you. Yeah, that's not the problem, right? I mean, but if you want to actually have a civilization that protects you both from your fellow citizens who could deprive you of your rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and big government. Last time I checked, conservatives were supposed to be a little bit, wary of Big Brother and the boot stomping on the face and all of that. Well, now you have to have ordered liberty and things including due process, which brings us to our first clip. This is Indiana Rep. Victoria Spartz and what she had to say at a town hall meeting recently.
You violated the rules. You are not entitled to due process.
I think under that Ukrainian accent, she said, if you violated the law, you were not entitled to due process, which sounds good until you realize the only way we could tell if you actually are guilty of violating the law is if you have been given due process.
Is it Ed Meese, the line about if the criminals weren't guilty, they wouldn't be arrested? I think that was that.
Oh my gosh! I hope that wasn't Ed Meese.
But... in my memory, it was attributed to Ed Meese. But the point is, yes, you can't assume what's to be proved, literally to be proved in a court of law. Um, I don't know, Matt. On the merits, you are right. Right. I wholly agree with you. You're making the principled case. My question for you is, do enough Americans care about this? If the Trump bet is, you know what, we're going to violate some civil liberties, but we're going to violate the liberties of people who are not, almost exclusively, not American citizens. They're people who are here, maybe they claim temporary protected status, maybe they have it, maybe they're green card holders, but we're going to just, break a few eggs on the way out. Do you think that enough Americans will rebel at what you're describing, the principled case, if by and large this is not happening to American citizens?
Great question, which is a great segue actually for me. I'll answer that and then I'll segue. So, first of all, I think your point is well taken. Americans are much more concerned about their own pinky toe than someone else's cancer. I mean, it's human nature. And so what we were talking about earlier, like with the tariffs, I think the potential for tariffs to raise prices, roil the markets, aggravate inflation are much more politically dangerous for Trump than what we're having take place with these immigrants. Whether it's a gay Venezuelan hairstylist and makeup artist, or a Turkish student who is essentially kidnapped off the street, thrown in an SUV, and disappeared. I think to Louisiana, which is actually better than El Salvador, but who knows? It's probably not great. So I think point well taken. But I will also say this: although I think there's like 40% of the population who is, rock solid in Trump's camp, in an election, we're really talking about these undecided swing voters. And among them probably are some people who care. Let me give you Exhibit A, Joe Rogan talking about this issue. Here we go.
This is kind of crazy that could be possible. That's horrific. And that's bad for the cause. Like, the cause is, let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees. But let's not innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with the gangs. And then, like, how long before that guy can get out? Can we figure out how to get him out? Is there any plan in place to alert the authorities that they've made a horrible mistake and correct it?
So there's a lot of people who listen to Joe Rogan. A lot of them were Democrats, or, they just didn't like Kamala Harris. So again, I think the economy is more important for most voters, but this issue could resonate, and here we see an example.
So let me confess that I want to believe you, Matt, but I've kind of lost my faith in Americans in terms of caring about this kind of thing. You drew the distinction right there. Tariffs, they're going to hit everybody. It's going to be more expensive to buy groceries, to buy auto parts, to buy cars, to buy everything. That's going to hurt you. This stuff, even hearing Joe Rogan talk about it, is that really going to motivate enough people? Are they going to say, gosh, it's really sad for that gay hairdresser that they got thrown in, without warrant, thrown in a prison? It wasn't them. They weren't a criminal. They were. I mean, just to draw a simple analogy, how many people actually decided to vote against Donald Trump because they thought he was being cruel to transgender Americans? But the gay hairdresser is somehow supposed to, like, motivate people. I don't know. I've kind of lost faith that Americans care about anybody but themselves.
Point well taken. I think you're generally right, but I would say a couple things. One, the kids in cages thing apparently backfired enough that they had to change tack in the first administration. I also think it's possible, we're seeing a broader theme having to do with callousness, having to do with corruption. And you throw in what Musk is doing, making senior citizens' lives harder, firing people, with what Trump is doing, deporting, and it's also a lack of competence. I mean, it's shoot first, aim later, ask questions finally, maybe. It's competence, it's callousness, it's corruption. We're seeing it the way he's shaking down law firms. And look, I don't want to get conspiratorial here, but now there's talk that if you vandalize a Tesla, which I do not advocate, then you could actually, if you're an American citizen, you could lose your citizenship and be treated as a domestic terrorist. Donald Trump has called essentially us enemies of the people and human scum. So if they can do it to the gay Venezuelan hairdresser,
Right.
who, where does it end? I hope that it ends there, but first they came for the gay Venezuelan barbers, then they came for the senior citizens who can't operate the internet to fix their Social Security. Maybe eventually they get around to the Substackers.
Right. Okay. So let me focus on the Social Security recipient that you're talking about, because let's say I've lost faith in the caring about others part. I would be so happy if Americans showed they did care. I hope Joe Rogan, motivates 100 million people to, to change sides on that. But let me come back to the Social Security case, because that is emblematic of a particular area that you're talking about, which is the incompetence of this Trump administration. Set aside that they're authoritarians, set aside all the corruption and drawing up special rules for people who abuse Teslas as opposed to some other product because Elon Musk is mind.
If you attack the Capitol, then you get pardoned. If you attack a Tesla, you go to Gitmo.
Right. So there's the obvious corruption, and all of it is galling. But the incompetence is what hits across. So the tariffs, that's just incompetence. That's just a president who doesn't understand economics 101, and he's going to do tremendous harm. The Social Security, another one. Like, we are not intending to hurt old people. It's just that we somehow didn't compute that if you fire the people who who answer the phones that old people call or who administer the checks won't arrive. And Howard Lutnick's mom may be fine not getting her Social Security check because her son's a billionaire, but everybody else, that's not going to be cool for them.
He said, if you don't get your Social Security check and you complain, you are a fraudster. There's the TV ads are going to write themselves well. I mean, that's one of 20 that are just pretty agreeable. Trump said he couldn't care less if automobile prices go up. I mean, there's so many ads here to be made, but I interrupted you. I digress.
No, well, so you have your political strategy for Trump in the midterms. I have a terrible track record at political strategy and prognostication, just to be upfront about it. But when I look at this amazing front of in Trump insanity, the thing that stands out to me is the incompetence. They don't know what they're doing. It's Musk with the chainsaw and Trump with the tariffs. They're just wrecking stuff. And you, I'm sure, would be one of the first people to say, there's a legitimate way to do this. There's fat in government, right? There are ways to reform the system and strip it down and get rid of people and move people into more productive work. This isn't it, right? This is just spraying around. So I suspect that the best case against Trump, the one that's going to hurt the most politically in actual elections, is that these guys with their the signal chat, they don't know what they're doing, and they don't even have the most basic element of acknowledgement that if we manifestly violate all the security protocols, it's so obvious to everyone, and we won't even accept that. No, it wasn't important that we directly told a reporter, somebody whose job it is to report information they get, hey, there's about to be a strike in Yemen. That's just insane.
Well, and look, I mean, I think you make a great point. And look, it's possible for political parties to have multiple messages and sub-messages and all of that. But I think they should focus group this, poll test this, and then come up with a theme. And the Democrats have tried, I've tried too, we have tried to scare the public about Donald Trump because he's a threat to liberal democracy. That did not work. At least it didn't work in 2024. So maybe instead of trying to scare people about, honestly, a real threat, maybe it's actually mockery. Maybe it's mocking the lack of competence. And look, I think deporting the wrong person fits under the umbrella of incompetence, right? The signal thing fits under the umbrella of incompetent. And like all of these things can be part of a broad message. It's like Donald Trump and his campaign, his team are a joke. They're incompetent, but there are real consequences because they did something stupid. An innocent person got deported. They did something stupid. Car prices went up 25%. They did something stupid. And now the Houthis and China are probably aware of what's coming next. And I just don't think the Democrats have actually been able to do that, to like harness all of this into one compelling message. And I'm not saying that we have in a half hour here figured it out exactly, but I feel like probably more than they've done overall so far.
Yeah, as you're describing this array, I'm thinking of Amy Klobuchar because she had a formulation for this. I think it was chaos, corruption, and something. What was the third one? It had to do with authoritarianism. It was a C word, it was alliteration. Maybe you can do all of those. Democrats as you point out, did the by the way, I don't fault Kamala Harris for going all in on the authoritarianism because I think she had to put that question to Americans and see how they would respond. And it's kind of our fault that she found that the lesson was
disagree.
Okay.
I kind of disagree but I think we knew the answer. I think that it was clear by the time Biden got out that it wasn't resonating. And then Kamala starts off running a different kind of race, actually, and then reverts in the 11th hour, reverts back to that desperation message that I think we had figured out by that point that it wasn't going to work. That's my reading of it. But they've got a lot more data points than I have.
Well, she did. I mean, nobody seems to remember. I mean, it's still amazing to me that people think she ran on transgender when she tried everything she could not to talk about it. And she kept talking about, things she was going to do to help you afford afford a down payment and on a home. And there was a tax. Anyway, it was an economic message that somehow just people lost it. Somehow cultural issues prevailed over that. But set that aside, it didn't work. And I think you're right. We have to try something else. So among Amy Klobuchar's set there of C's, it's not. I just don't believe the corruption will cut enough. Maybe it does, but the chaos was a term for just wrecking stuff. And Matt, you know that there's always been this debate between the Democrats and the Republicans, the evil party and the stupid party, right? But the Democrats always said Republicans were the evil party, right? And as you point out, that didn't sell enough. I'm kind of interested in trying the stupid party approach too, because I think Trump is fundamentally stupid, and the filter that's happened between the first and second Trump administrations was for judgment, for the willingness to speak up, for intelligence. I mean, he's surrounded by idiots, and
the other good thing about adopting that argument is, you, as the attacker, go from pearl clutching to mocking and laughing. So it's easier to be a happy warrior when you run that kind of race as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The sense of humor part of it, boy, good on you if you can keep your sense of humor through this. It's hard.
Oh, that's my whole model now.
Yeah.
That's I'm not saying I'm like a comedian by any stretch, but there's different people have to have different psychological ways of surviving in this environment. And I have tried my best to, because I can't change things by myself, is to be as dispassionate as possible and look at the absurdity of this all. And it doesn't mean that I'm cynical or whatever, but we all have to have our coping methods. I think trying to be funny and mock the insanity is not a bad place to be, considering where we are. But hey, look, we're relitigating the past with Kamala Harris. I want to keep that going while we're doing it. Before we logged on, you mentioned that you read something. I think it was in the Telegraph about Joe Biden.
I think it's the Guardian.
Guardian. Yeah. I assume this is from that new book, one of the new books that's out.
Yeah, it's Chris Whipple's book.
Joe Biden's debate prep, and you said that you were about to jump out your window. Tell me what you read.
This is Ron Klain, Biden's former chief of staff, admitting that during Biden's debate prep before the disastrous June 2024 debate, Biden was out to lunch. Not, just what you saw on stage was not a bad 90 minutes. It was going on before that. And I'm sure Biden had his lucid moments, and we saw many of them on TV. There were times when he was, and I still think Joe Biden had more of a talking problem than a thinking problem. But I've been saying this for a while to my friends. It will turn out to be a monstrous scandal, the extent to which Biden's inner circle knew how far he had declined and tried, I don't want to say they basically covered it up. Oh, grandpa has his bad moments, but it was bad enough that he should not have been running for president. He should have cleared out. And I grant you that it came on him late. He was not that bad in 2022. It was progressive, but it's pretty clear that he had enough runway that he could have pulled out. There could have been a real Democratic primary. I don't know if it would have been enough to overcome the immigration problems, the inflation problems, but it was deeply wrong that the people around Joe Biden hid this, and it was selfish. It was diluted, according to Whipple's book, that they really thought that somehow Biden was going to pull it through. It was reckless. They gambled with our country and they lost, and I'm furious about it.
All right, my friend. I am too. Well said. Final thoughts? Anything you want to plug?
I've been doing the parade of Trump's attacks on our allies. Last one I wrote was about the attack on Canada. We've moved on to Denmark, so I'll be writing this week about Trump's war on Denmark.
Oh, we got to laugh because we can't cry.
Yeah.
Always a pleasure, man.
You too.
We could talk to you all day, but we've got stuff to do, so we'll have to leave it there. Will Saletan, thanks for coming back on the podcast.
Thank you, man.